Thank you for tuning in to the Voice of the Victim podcast. We discuss a lot of sad and potentially triggering things on this show. We try to be as sensitive and cautious as possible, but if you are sensitive to things involving abuse and may be triggered, please think twice before listening to our show.
Welcome to the Voice of the Victim podcast. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Rosie.
How are you doing today, Rosie?
I'm doing pretty well. It's day 16 of my workout initiative, and it's been hard, but I'm going to let you guys know if I keep doing it or if I bomb once in a while, because I think it's somewhat motivating for other people.
Workout initiative. Sounds pretty official.
Oh, it's pretty official. I write it down on my calendar.
Nice.
And fancy gel pen.
Yeah, you've been doing really well. I'm really proud of you.
Thank you. How are you doing today, Ryan?
I'm doing okay. Just got done plowing the driveway, so I'm glad to have that done.
Yeah, we got like a mystery 6 inches overnight, but thankfully Ryan was able to clear it all away.
A lot of you probably noticed we didn't have an episode last week, and that was totally my fault. We were planning on it, but just had an off week, and like, when we first started this podcast, it was really low pressure, and we just did whatever we did, tried to do our best. But now, I'm starting to feel some pressure.
Oh.
Like, just internally, that I'm putting on myself. And I should probably stop doing that.
Yeah.
I just don't want to let anyone down when we take a week off. And so I feel bad about that. But, deep down I know that people understand. Anyway.
2021 is a fresh year.
Yeah, 2 days away. Anyway, thank you to everyone who's listening to this and who has been listening. We really appreciate you guys. And we have a new patron to thank this week, which is pretty cool. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you so much.
We really appreciate your support and the really sweet message. Should we share a review before we get started?
Yeah. This one's entitled Love It, and it's 5 stars. It says, love, love, love you guys. The cases are presented flawlessly, and I love how both of your personalities shine through. I've binged all of your episodes and have even re-listened to most. Keep it coming, and thank you for making my long work days enjoyable. Lots of love from Australia.
Oh, cool. Thank you, Shannon.
Shannon T, 93?
Yeah, from Australia. That's really cool.
Love our Australian listeners.
Even though I can't agree that the cases are presented flawlessly because...
Yeah, very true.
No, but thank you so much.
Funny, because we're talking about Australia today.
Oh my gosh, you're right. Wow. Maybe I subconsciously did that on purpose. Anyway, tonight we're sharing the story of Davine Arckens. And I think this is the first outline we've ever written together, right, Rosie? Mm-hmm. At least that I can remember.
Yeah, definitely.
Rosie did most of the research, and then I just structured it and added in context and stuff. So thank you for your help, Rosie.
You're welcome.
This episode of Voice of the Victim podcast is supported by Best Fiends. And we all have a lot of crazy stuff on our minds right now, but one of my favorite ways to get my mind off of all that is by playing Best Fiends. You heard us talk about Best Fiends. It's a very fun game, and because of that, it's very popular, with over 100 million global downloads. If you haven't yet, maybe it's time you jump on the wagon. Best Fiends has found a way to be both very engaging and challenging, while also feeling laid back and casual, because none of us need more stress right now. So Rosie, will you explain Best Fiends to our listeners just in case they haven't heard of it?
Sure. Pretty much Best Fiends is just a really relaxed puzzle game. Different puzzles that you complete will give you different rewards. Right now, I'm doing the Giving Thanks quest. The whole point is that I have to complete different tasks, and then after that, it will give me a reward. Super easy. Sometimes I don't even know that I'm doing the quests because I'm just doing normal stuff that I always do. And then I win prizes.
And I appreciate that about the game. It never gets old because they update it every month with new events. And also, you don't need to be connected to the internet to progress through the game. I love its bright colors and cute characters. It's just very fun. So engage your brain with fun puzzles and collect tons of cute characters. Trust me, with over 100 million downloads, this 5-star rated mobile puzzle game is a must play. So download Best Fiends for free on the Apple App Store or Google Play. That's friends without the R. Best Fiends. So Davine Arckens is originally from Huila?
Huel.
Huel? Mm-hmm. Huel, Belgium. I thought it was Huila.
I think you're right. I think it's Hula.
Because you had it spelled wrong, and I was trying to look it up, and it didn't exist.
I think you're right, actually.
And then I changed the spelling.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's a town of around 10,000 people, and it's about an hour and a half drive west of Brussels, which is the only place I really know in Belgium. So, Davine grew up in this little place, and growing up there kind of stirred up a desire in her to get out of her hometown and see the rest of the world.
Right. Davine always had a spirit for adventure. And by her early 20s, Davine was already an established traveler. She had been to South Africa, Guatemala, and China.
And when she was in China, she met a woman named Echo Wang, who shared the same love of travel that Davine had, and they became very close friends. And so by the time she was 24, she was planning the biggest trip of her life so far.
She was drawn to the idea of visiting Australia because she wanted to experience the wildlife and the beautiful views. She said it seemed like an amazing country to visit and go backpacking through.
And in case backpacking's an unknown term to you, I had to look it up. It's when someone travels very light and carries all of their necessary possessions in a backpack and keep it as low cost as possible. Mm-hmm. So it's a very attainable goal for anyone if you're really adventurous.
I love this, and I want to do this too.
I suppose there is the whole travel cost thing, and, well, I don't even want to talk about the current travel situation. Anyway.
Let's get back to it. Davine was a bit nervous about this big trip because Australia has some pretty dangerous animals, but this was outweighed by her anticipation and excitement. In 2016, Davine arrived in Sydney, Australia with a 1-year working visa. From there, she worked her way to Melbourne and then down to Tasmania.
And for our Australian listeners, I'm just going to say Melbourne.
Yeah.
Because that's how I hear it pronounced. But her visa was only good for a year, and in order to extend it, she needed to find some work to meet the quota.
Right, so Davine posted an ad online, making herself available for work, and eventually someone reached out to her. His name was Max, and he was a farmer, asking if she'd be willing to help raise baby animals on his farm. Amazing job opportunity, if you ask me.
Sounds like a great job. And she was kind of desperate to get work so she wouldn't have to leave Australia before she wanted to. So the job sounded really good, and when she dug into it, it sounded legit.
Right. She had been searching for work for a really long time and didn't think she was going to get any. And this job, literally landed in her lap right when she needed it.
Interesting.
He told her that he worked for a company called Genesis Incorporated, which owned several farms in South Australia, and loved to help employ the backpacking community, citing that the company had recently hired a young French backpacker at another farm. And
Davine did her due diligence to check into the legitimacy of this job. She sent the info to her friend, Echo, who was also backpacking in Australia at the time. Not together, but she was up in Queensland.
Mm-hmm. Echo couldn't find anything wrong with this job and congratulated her friend on finding it, knowing how difficult it could be for backpackers to find work.
And Echo could sense that Davine was still a bit cautious about the job, but she reassured her, telling her friend that thousands of other backpackers do the same job and that she'd be fine.
Mm-hmm. On Thursday morning, February 9th, 2017, Davine checked out of her hostel in Adelaide and took a bus about an hour southeast and got off at Murray Bridge. Max was already there waiting for her in his red pickup truck. He spotted her and walked up to her, greeting her with a handshake.
And he looked like a normal, hard-working farmer, wasn't setting off any red flags, and he also seemed very friendly and chatty. So this helped put her mind at ease. The farm was in Meningi?
I can't remember how it's pronounced. I thought it was Meningi.
Meningi. Oh, cool. Well, that's about 50 minutes south if you're driving from Murray Bridge, and it's highway driving, it looks like.
They got into his truck and he started driving. But as they drove, Davine started to feel like this trip was taking way longer than it should. But Max said he was taking the scenic route.
And I guess this makes sense. Maybe he figured she would appreciate that since she was a backpacking tourist.
Although the road from Murray Bridge to Meningi was basically a straight shot from down Prince's Highway, they ended up taking 2 ferry rides.
Now, at first, when I looked at the map, this looked ridiculous that they would take these ferry rides when it's basically a straight shot down Prince's Highway. But maybe since he was driving a pickup, he figured it was way cheaper to pay admission for the ferry than to get gas and put the wear on his truck. I don't know. And second, ferry rides are kind of fun if you like being out on the water and you want to see the scenery. I don't know. But I'm guessing when they were on these ferries, they were crossing Lake Alexandrina.
That's a good guess. I have no idea.
It was right there next to.
Got it. Well, Davine felt like they were in the middle of nowhere. The farm was located on the outskirts of Meningi, which is a small town with around 1,000 people in it. When they finally arrived, they had to go through 2 different fences. The farm was set on a 2.5-acre property and had many parts to it. They got out of the truck, and Max showed her the barn shed where he said that she would be caring for cows and calves. Then he showed her the pig shed.
Now in the pig shed, he brought her to a specific stall which had a futon couch and a dirty old fridge in it. So this was weird. But he told her he had had problems with past employees using narcotics, and he would need her to sit down and let him inspect her feet for needle marks.
Right, so Davine took off her shoes and complied with his request. And after this, he said he also needed to check her arms and legs and asked her to lay down on her belly on the futon with her feet up.
So this was much more odd than just having her feet checked, but she figured maybe this was his protocol, and again, she complied. But things took a really weird turn at this point.
Max stood there, just touching her feet, for a lot longer than Davine was comfortable with. After a few minutes, Davine felt him push her down and dig something into her shoulder. She struggled to get away, but he said that if she kept struggling, he was going to shoot her.
So she realized what she felt in her shoulder was a gun. So this just took a turn from uncomfortably creepy to downright threatening. It turns out that this man wasn't who he said he was at all. His real name was Gene Bristow. So that's what we're going to call him from now on.
Gene tied up Davine's hands behind her back with cable ties and shackled her feet with chains. After this, he forcibly stripped all of her clothes off, leaving her defenseless.
Can you imagine? You were already skeptical of this job. You thought you did your due diligence to vet the situation and make sure it was legitimate. And then you find yourself in this situation. And remember, she's in a foreign country alone. She has no family nearby or even friends.
And all of her belongings are with her in that shed. Once Davine was naked, Gene began to sexually assault her, raping her multiple times. When he was done, he informed her that she would not be wearing clothes anymore, and he also threatened her, telling her that if she tried to escape, he would definitely kill her.
So he's literally taken all of her power away under the guise of being a trustworthy employer. So he literally took advantage of the power and authority that he made her believe he had over her as an employee. When they arrived here, she was just trying to do what she could to make her new employer happy, you know? So it's such a skeevy way to take advantage of someone, and now her freedom is stolen.
Gene told Davine that she was now the property of a criminal gang which trafficked young women, and that she must be kind to him because other people within this organization were watching him. He said his boss shipped girls all over Australia to be trafficked and that the police were in on the whole thing, so she shouldn't even bother trying to go to them.
This would be terrifying to hear, and reminds me of the kidnapping of Colleen Stan.
I was just thinking that.
I think we covered that in episode 8, which isn't
It was a long
up
time
anymore
ago.
because we didn't know what we were doing back then. Maybe we should cover it again. But her kidnapper told her that he was part of a company that was watching them, and if she did escape, they'd come after them. And it wasn't just this guy. He has people on the outside. So it's psychological torture that makes the victims feel hopeless because suddenly they're imprisoned by a huge, powerful organization, not just this one guy.
Right.
So it's just sick and twisted manipulation.
In just a few moments, Davine lost everything. She lost her family, her freedom, her possessions, keys, phone, even her clothes. She felt tiny, powerless, and trapped.
So just let that sink in. I can't even imagine how I'd feel in this situation, but I think it's important to try to think about that.
Right. Remember
when
the
we're
car
talking about
ride.
this.
She believes she's hours away. I mean, he took her away she had never thought to go. So she doesn't know where she is at all.
Yeah.
And also the 2 fences it took to get into the farm. Like, this place is secure. Very scary.
Yeah.
Before Jean left the stall in the shed, he used pliers to tighten the chains on her shackles to make sure there was no way they could be released by bare hands. Then he checked the fridge in the room to make sure that there was nothing Davine could use to hurt him or to get away. Then he left her there, shackled by one arm and one leg.
So once he was gone, she had no idea when he'd be back or what he was planning to do next, but she was determined to survive.
When Jean was checking the fridge, Davine had noticed some hooks on the inside that she thought she may be able to use to loosen the chains. She made her way over to the old fridge in the room, still chained, and was able to pry one of the hooks out. She fit the hook into a hole in her shackles and started to twist.
And again, she's in a state of panic because Jean could literally show up at any moment, and he's already told her that if she tries to escape, he would kill her. None of her family knows where she is, and no one knows exactly where she is. So if she were to get caught, if he was to walk in while she's trying to get these things off, she has no reason to believe she won't be dead.
Right.
So she must be so panicked and stressed out at this when she's trying to do this.
I remember, too, she's naked. I mean, I know
Oh, that's right.
might not be the biggest trauma that she's going through, but she's so vulnerable. I can't imagine being chained in this dirty shed. I mean, disgusting atmosphere. And she's naked. No sense of comfort anywhere.
Yeah, that's a good point.
After working on the shackles with the hook for a while, Davine was able to loosen them enough to slip her hand out. Then she started working on the foot shackle, which didn't come loose as easily.
So do you know how long it took her to work on this one?
I believe it took her a long time, but she just kept on trying, like
Several
hours. Yeah.
Ugh. And at this point, it's too late to pretend that she's compliant if Jean does walk in. And of course, she's struggling to get this one off because she's already got her hand free. If he walks in, he'll know. Even if she is able to play it cool when he walks in, he'll see the first chain off. So she's even more stressed out.
Well, eventually, Davine was able to get the shackle off of her foot as well. But now she's faced with a very difficult decision. She was afraid that if she tried to run, he would just shoot her.
Also, there were 2 sets of fences, which he probably would have locked by this point. But Davine had another idea. She had noticed when Jean was going through her stuff and taking everything out of her backpack, he missed one very important thing.
That's right. In her backpack, within a hidden compartment, her laptop and Wi-Fi stick were safely stowed.
Yeah.
Wow. Maybe you should spend the extra money and get the fancy backpacks.
So, do they make them this way on purpose?
Yeah, this is for
because
travelers.
this is such a problem?
Yeah, for pickpocketing and stuff.
Wow. Very clever. So, as smart as Gene thought he was, somehow he didn't notice the weight of a laptop still in the backpack. Because laptops aren't, like, light.
I'm sure there was a lot going on when he was checking that bag in his head.
True, but it seems kind of idiotic to me. But when she noticed that he missed this, it did bring us a sense of hope to Davine. She actually had a way she might be able to get some help. But there was still a glaring problem. She had no idea where she actually was.
Right. Davine booted up her laptop and was able to connect to the internet. She logged into Facebook and started messaging every one of her friends who was online at the time. I am going to say also that it's very late at night at this point, and she was very concerned of the light of the laptop.
On the window?
Signaling.
Did she have a window?
I don't think she has, well, not in the stall, but just in the building she was concerned.
Yeah. I suppose when it's so dark, just a little bit of light is noticeable. But one of these people she was messaging included her friend Echo, as well as her family members. But Echo was actually on her phone at the time and was able to talk with Davine real time for a bit.
She said that she needed help and that she had been kidnapped at a cow farm somewhere in southern Australia by a man with a red pickup truck. Davine added that she'd traveled from Murray Bridge and had taken 2 ferries.
So Echo asked her to send her location, but Davine told her she didn't have her phone. She was on her laptop, and apparently she wasn't able to get her location on her laptop.
Echo did what she could to try to help calm down her friend, saying, "Don't worry, you will be safe."
And right after this, Davine's internet signal suddenly cut out.
She quickly put everything back the way it was as fast as she could, slipping her hand and foot back into the shackles.
And I just want to say, can you imagine being her mom or dad and logging into Facebook in the morning to find these messages? The instant panic and fear you'd feel, and just feeling helpless because she's not online anymore. You can't reply to her, and you have no idea where she is.
Well, how about the feeling of putting your hand and foot back in the shackles, taking that risk between just running off, you know?
Yeah, no kidding.
But her friend Echo called the police right away, who were very grateful for the information that Davine was able to provide, because without that, they would have no idea where to begin in searching southern Australia. It's a huge area.
Yeah, exactly. So Davine's a great example here, like for anyone who does find themselves in this situation. And I mean, it's totally super lucky break that she was actually able to have her laptop and contact with the outside world. But if you ever are in a situation where you're trying to get help, just provide as much information as you possibly can to help police get to you as quickly as possible, because it really made a difference in this case, I think. But besides that, there was another lucky break in this case, and again, it came from Gene's own stupidity. Gene never turned off Davine's phone.
Crazy. The phone had been communicating with nearby phone towers, which helped police narrow the massive possible search area down to a much smaller and more manageable one. The morning after Davine sent out those messages, a search was underway in the area where her phone pinged, both on land and in the air.
Yeah, and Davine says she could hear helicopters flying over the shed as she was in it, and desperately hoped that they were looking for her.
That day at 2 p.m., air police spotted a red pickup, like the one Davine had described. It was parked under a tree. Police began covert surveillance on the vehicle to see who was driving it and where it was heading.
And eventually a man came out and got into the truck and started heading toward town. Happens that she actually was right outside of Meningie. Is that how you say it? Right. So it was, I think they said, less than a kilometer from the police station.
Isn't that crazy?
But not long into this drive, he was being pulled over. And of course, the man was Gene.
It played out as a routine traffic stop, but Gene was noticeably rattled.
And in cases like these where there's a missing person, they can't just go in and aggressively arrest the suspect. Instead, they played it cool And they actually let him go from this traffic stop so he could unknowingly lead them to his crime scene.
Seemingly in a panic, Gene drove off from the traffic stop and raced back to his farm and headed straight to the pig shed. He walked in, took Davine's chains off of her, and threw clothes at her, telling her to get dressed.
So, huge shift from last time she saw him.
Right.
But, he was acting all tough, forcing this control on her. Now he's panicking. He's the one who's feeling powerless.
He started yelling, "The police are coming! They're here! We've got to go!" Which was super confusing to Davine, because earlier he had told Davine that the cops were in on the whole trafficking ring with the company that this guy worked for. But Davine complied, and she got dressed, putting her backpack on and following Gene to the truck. And Gene drove her all the way back up to Murray Bridge, almost an hour north.
And during this whole ride, she has no idea what's going on, whether she's going to be safe or not, because she still has what he said about the police in the back of her mind. She wasn't 100% sure if she could trust them or not.
And she doesn't know where she's going. For all that she knows, he could be driving her to a dumping point.
Yeah, no kidding.
Gene dropped her off at the Central Olympic Motel, telling her to lay low and take the bus to the airport and just go home. She was relieved to be away from Gene, but she was still paranoid and unable to trust anyone because of this trafficking ring that Gene had planted in her head.
But can you, he thinks that he can just drop her off at this motel and tell her to go home, and everything's fine now because he let her go?
Right.
But after something like this happens to you, in Davine's case, if you experience something like that, it makes you realize that literally anything could happen, no matter how terrible or how far-fetched it may seem. Like, this could never happen to me, but you realize that this could happen. So you're probably more likely to believe that there is a big trafficking company out there to get you, even though it sounds crazy.
Right.
Why wouldn't you believe that?
Right, and Davine was a smart woman. She had been traveling for years. She was a strong woman. She felt like she could carry herself in situations that were going to be, hard to get out of.
Yeah, she'd done a lot of travels independently and knew how to take care of herself.
But she stayed in this motel for a long time, and the only reason why she left is because she was so hungry. She decided that she needed to go out and grab some food. And while she was out, she ran into an off-duty police officer who noticed her and called her name. In that moment, Davine felt so overwhelmed and surrounded. She was so worried that what Gene had told her could be true. She was brought to the police station, and finally there she felt relief when she realized that they were going to help her. Gene Bristow, on the other hand, went straight home after dropping off Davine and immediately shaved his head in a panic, attempting to disguise himself. Then he went out to the pig shed and started cleaning up the crime scene. But despite his attempts to cover up his crime and pretend it never happened, the next morning police showed up and he was arrested.
Yeah. So it turns out there was another secret about this guy that Davine had no idea about.
Right. Gene was married, with a daughter and a son. And even more crazy is that they lived in a house on the same property where Gene was keeping Davine. His wife, Jan, son, David, and David's girlfriend, Shane, were all at home when Gene brought Davine to the farm. None of them had any clue what was going on in that shed until the police showed up to arrest their husband and father.
Can you imagine that bombshell? Realizing this man you loved as a husband or a father has done something so horrible behind your back and you had no idea?
Well, some guilt, too, because all this is happening literally feet from where you're sleeping.
Yeah.
The house they all lived in was only 1,100 feet away from the pig shed where Davine was kept. Gene's son, David, was overwhelmed by this news, and he said that in that moment, he stopped loving his father. He realized that he didn't really know who his father was the way he should, and worried that this could have happened before in the past. Police found Davine's DNA in the pig shed stall. They found her cell phone submerged in a water tank on the farm, and the shackle chains were thrown into a well.
And in the trash, they found Gene's gun, but it turns out it was just a toy gun all along. But still, he felt the need to throw it out.
On top of all of this, they also found homemade torture devices made up of chains and belts.
But even though they found all this evidence and literally watched him drive his victim back to Murray Bridge and then go back and clean up his crime scene, Gene Bristow refuses to admit that he's done anything wrong. My question is, why did he shave his head if he did nothing wrong? And why did he throw all this stuff? Why did he throw a phone in the water tank? Why did he throw chains into a well? Like, how do you explain that, Gene?
I know, it's really crazy. And Gene actually blamed his son David, saying he needed to look for help on the farm because David didn't do enough to help the farm.
Like, instead of blaming David for the actual kidnapping and the actual crimes that happened, he blamed him that he needed to look for help. Like,
So he's not saying that there wasn't a woman on the farm helping. He's just saying, like, she just made this up and it's actually my kid's fault because he's lazy.
so dumb.
Yeah.
But I can definitely understand why David doesn't love his father anymore. But it seems like Gene still cares about what David thinks because he's written several letters to David saying that Davine is lying about the whole thing and claiming to be a victim for the money. What money?
Right. I don't think there was much money that she could even get. But Gene Bristow was still found guilty, even though he says he's not. He was sentenced to 18 years in prison, and in 2032 he'll be eligible for parole. And David hopes that he never sees Gene again, and he's glad that Gene is paying for his crimes.
Yeah. Just thinking about David here and Gene's wife, and then Davine's parents. You know, Davine's not the only victim in this case. This guy affected a lot of people.
Right.
Obviously, she suffered the most and had like the really horrible experience, but he hurt so many people and he refuses to take any responsibility.
None.
And 18 years seems light to me when you don't even cooperate and admit guilt.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about this case is that he probably would have gotten longer if she was held hostage for longer or held captive for longer. But he had some pretty terrible plans for her with all those homemade torture devices he had laying out, ready to go. I mean, the only thing stopping him was that she left, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and that he didn't notice a laptop in the bag.
Yeah.
If he would have taken her whole backpack, she would have been...
This would have been really gruesome.
Yeah.
I mean, it already was, but she might have not survived.
Yeah. And I think they should look at intentions as much as they look at what actually happened. I mean, attempted murder should be just as serious as actual murder.
Right.
You know? And same in this. It's just, if he were to have been successful with his plan...
Yes. It's very strange.
What price would he actually have paid if he got caught later on?
I also feel terrible for David. He is so heartbroken about his dad. I know in the interviews he only shows how angry and upset he is, but he's obviously very hurt and sad.
Well, he probably has no idea how to show the emotion right now because it's so weird.
So Davine Arckens is now doing very well for what happened to her. She says she's deathly afraid of the dark now, but she's working to overcome that fear. Davine is also taking self-defense classes and learning how to take on her attackers, and she's determined more than ever to never again be a victim.
That's really cool. Makes me want to take self-defense classes.
I wouldn't mind.
Hey, maybe that could be your new workout routine.
Maybe.
Once you get sick of yoga and biking or whatever. That's all we have on this case, but I'm glad you found this.
Thank you.
I'd never heard about it before, and it's really intense. But I'm glad that she's recovering. Because, I mean, even though it was only like a day long, it was still trauma that...
One night,
it
2 days.
probably felt like
Yeah.
forever.
Right.
she had no idea if she was going to be able to get out of there until the moment she was. So
I mean, I really feel like having that backpack with the secret compartment, that's what saved her life.
Yeah. Very fascinating. And a good cautionary tale for everyone who's going backpacking.
Yeah.
Get the good backpack. Well, thank you, Rosie, for researching this case.
You are so welcome.
I think it went well, and I appreciate you doing such a good job, even though I was being kind of a drama queen at the beginning. Full disclosure, we tried starting this episode like 57 times before we finally got it right. Like, the cats kept making noise, and then we kept bumping our mics, and then I kept getting cranky. I don't even know. Anyway, yeah, I think just the lack of sun. We haven't had sun in a while.
It's true.
But you're doing so well because you've been taking really good care of yourself.
Thank you. I am determined.
I'm really proud of you.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you guys for listening. Do you have anything else to say, Rosie?
2021. Here we come.
Yeah, exactly. There's only 2 days left of this craptacular year. And let's start in, what is it, Friday? On Friday? We're going to have that New Year positivity.
And
All
my
right.
guy's going to start working out with me.
Sometimes I do.
Okay. Thank you for listening to our show. We really appreciate it. Give us some 5-star reviews and you'll be featured.
I worked out clearing the snow off the driveway today.
You did. You did.
I'm all set for the day. Also, that homemade chipotle we made last night was very great leftovers. Okay, we gotta wrap this up.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for listening. I'll talk to you next week.
Bye.